So we're going to bring this meeting of the IT Advisory Committee, Belmont IT Advisory Committee, to order. It is Wednesday, January 27th, 7:36 p.m. And welcome, everybody. Welcome back in the new year. It's good to see you all again. We got a kind of busy agenda. So I think first order of business is to review the minutes from our December meeting that Mr. Goldberg sent around. And has any...
I can share the screen or...
Yeah, that would be great, Dave.
Okay.
Yeah, I looked at it.
I need the host to allow me to do it.
Oh, yeah, sorry. One sec.
Yeah, Dave, I took a quick look right before this meeting. I didn't see anything obvious that was missing, but
neither did I.
Nor did I.
I was fine with it.
Does anybody have anything to add or any corrections to make to Dave's notes, minutes from last meeting? I don't.
No.
Great. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Let's see hands, I think, maybe. Great. Okay, none opposed, any opposed? Nope. So the minutes are adopted. Thank you very much. Okay. Glenn, do you have the agenda, or Dave, do you have the agenda?
I do. So after minutes, it was public comments and questions, and then we were going to move to just the review of the select board remote meeting report, and then discussion of projects. So pretty similar, I think, to last time.
Yep. So let me just see. I don't think we've got anybody, and sorry, I'm just trying to think through I don't think we have anybody from the public on, so I think we can skip past that and move on to the report that on remote participation. Again, hoping to hand this off to the select board, hopefully after this meeting. And I know a bunch of you had edits, so I think probably the best thing would just be to kind of bring it, if you can, kind of bring it up. I don't know, Glenn, do you want to share your screen, or what would be the easiest way to collaborate on this? Just get these final edits done.
Yep, I'm happy to do that. Just give me a second. Let me bring it up. And
Yep.
I think you'll probably need to give presenter rights.
I think you got them.
And I'm having trouble stopping the share.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know. Something
It looks
weird
like
with
it stopped to me. I'm not seeing anything being
Yeah,
shared right now.
I'm not. Yeah, the window isn't highlighted anymore, but I still have the little stop share button flashing at me, and I don't have video.
Okay. Oh, did it just change?
It just changed.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
For me,
gonna
anyway.
drop and come back on real quick because this
Okay,
is
Dave.
not workable.
Okay. So let me see. Let me just see if I can find where all of you are. There we are. Okay. So just a quick summary, and I did follow up on a lot of the comments, but only last night. It's amazing what a deadline will do for you. Just as a refresher, we had the report more or less fleshed out by the last meeting. I know a number of you had gone in and helped with, wordsmithing, correcting some of the titles, labels. There was one suggestion to throw in a few visuals in terms of graphs in one section. So basically, my last round of edits, if you will, was to go through and review all the different suggestions and edits, basically accept, I think 99% of them, added 2 pie charts, and then there was one section left where the wording was in question, and I did not have a clear understanding of how to reword it. So it was the section that Paul, you had written. So I think that's probably the one part we probably want to look at more closely. But I'll just run through it real quick here and make sure folks are familiar with the contents, et cetera, right? And you should all have access to this, but if not, I'm happy to repost the link maybe to it if you want to follow along directly. So let me do that real quick in the chat window. Let's see if I can do this. Chat. Okay. So, right, there's the executive summary, introduction. We talk about the remote meeting experiment. We talk about open meeting law considerations, some technical requirements, and then a few other considerations. And I think largely this is, the report we had presented to them, to the select board back in March, right? With the addition of some, realities of the use of remote during COVID, and then inclusion of some of the survey results that we did of the some of the committee chairs, right, over the summer. Okay, so let's see, executive summary here. Just upfront saying what we wanted them to do, right? Effectively, we're saying you should vote to allow remote participation as permitted under OML, and then also we suggest that you draft and submit to state legislature changes to how remote works, given that the OML use of technology and such was rather limited, right? Describe that a little bit more in detail. And then the introduction here obviously goes into what happened with COVID, as well as the fact that we had tried to talk to the select board about permitting remote under OML right before the state of emergency. Here, this is just a comment that we did learn, that Senator Brownsberger and Rep. Rogers, I believe, were supportive, but had not thought through what changes to legislature might be required, and were interested in feedback, right? That's something we heard over the summer. And then just some of the details around our recommendations. And then this is a little, almost an aside of like, hey, we did a survey of some of our committee members, and this is some of the, sorry, this is based on your July 2019 survey, right, where we surveyed a number of different townspeople, committee members, and I think outside of Belmont as well, perhaps, right? And then this is a little bit of a side that's like about a page or two of the summer survey we did. It was pretty basic stuff, but this is just a little bit to break up the text, right? So one was just, this is an added chart from last time. Continue using remote, and basically we only had 7 respondents, so it wasn't a huge amount. But visually, it was like, hey, about a third, almost a half of them were totally fine with having remote meetings continue after pandemic as is. This yellow one is they were okay with it, but would prefer to be in person. And then this gray slice was just someone who chose not to respond.
So nearly equal parts, either yes without qualification, or see the value but would prefer in person as the default.
Right.
Yeah.
And one could argue this group is probably also would prefer in person, but had no problems using the remote technology, right, as an option. But the point is that there was basically large in favor of using remote in ways that would make sense for them. Even post-pandemic. And then, this was just a little bit of, hey, how familiar are you with what you can and can't do under OML? And the majority, 4 out of those 7 were familiar with it, but there are a few who are just not familiar with the fact that there are pretty severe restrictions, right? And these are, some of the most high-profile committees, right, that we have in the town. So I can imagine that there's a lot of committees who are very unfamiliar with it, partly because they're not meeting as frequently, if at all, during the pandemic right now. All right, this hasn't changed. The one thing we did, or at least I did, was to move these additional comments to the end, because these were all qualitative. So above, we were sort of summarizing what folks had said, sort of, how many had voted one way or another. And then this is just more like the open forum, open text comments. And then this describes the experiment that, basically what we've been doing as a committee, with some of the stats off of our YouTube pages, some of the learnings, and food for thought, and then some of the OML considerations. So this is the part I just wasn't quite sure what to make of. So maybe I'll pause here and have you read through it. Jonathan had questioned the word "following" here, and I wasn't quite sure what the intent of the sentence was, and if I think it was to actually say that individuals participating remotely that aren't part of the committee itself actually don't even need to worry about OML.
Yeah, they're not governed by OML. So, yeah. So I think that should probably read, if a public body chooses to allow individuals who are not members of the public body to participate remotely in a meeting, it may do so following the open meeting laws, remote participation procedure. I see your confusion.
Yeah, I think the issue is that it says without following, and I think that just sounds bad, even though what it really means is that the law doesn't apply in that case.
That's why I offered the
I
word
think, yeah,
violation instead.
it may do so. I might just change it to, period, open meeting law is, silent on public participation, public remote participation or something like that. Open meeting law doesn't govern or has no bearing or is silent on public participation, remote participation in meetings. I think that's kind of what we're trying to say.
All right. Do you want me to make the change live, or are you in the doc?
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
All right. So I think you said it may do so full stop, right?
Yeah.
And then the point here is open meeting law does not govern
Public participation.
public participation remotely.
Yeah.
Remote public participation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that all right with everyone?
Yeah, that's it.
I'm still a little. Does it say? I mean, if it says nothing about it, is it right to say it doesn't govern it, or that it is silent on it, or?
Yeah, I think is silent on it might be more accurate.
Or does not specify
Silent on the-
requirements. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yes.
I'm
Yep.
gonna delete this.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good.
No,
Right,
it's,
so
this is not. Oh, this is not quite as strong a statement as. I'm sort of going back to my original suggestion of changing the word "following" to "violating," because with this, the way we have it worded now, which I'm okay with, begs or leaves open the possibility that the selectman may go to town council and said, "Would you please give us your opinion on this?" Because open meeting law is silent. Where I think we could make a more definitive statement and say, we can do so because we're not violating the open meeting laws.
That's true. That's a good point,
Well,
John.
do we believe that this was a conscious omission from open meeting law, or do we believe that this is something that they're going to have to ask council for their opinion on? I mean, did they leave it out because they really just don't want to have anything to do with it, or do they just is it still a matter to be decided?
Well, I think open meeting law was really about protecting the public from committees that might want to do their business out of the public eye. And so,
Yes.
it's really focused on the functioning of that elected or appointed body, not on how the public participates in their meetings. That's so I think it's just like out of scope for the open meeting law. The public can participate via phone, via in person, what have you. It's all good. The more, in some ways, the more, the better. But it doesn't really matter because the public isn't part of the deliberative process. They're just there to provide their feelings and input.
Well, they're in some sense they're also there to witness the deliberation.
That
Mhm.
too, right.
Yeah, very much.
I think Jonathan has a good point. Saying it's silent does kind of imply that maybe we should be seeking legal opinions on it. And it might be more accurate to just say, maybe that whole sentence started by saying, as it stands, or furthermore, if a public body chooses to allow individual, maybe just change the structure to say something like, furthermore, as it stands, a public body may currently allow individuals who are not members of the public body to participate remotely without violating the open meeting law or something like that.
I mean, or said in a different way, it's actually well within the spirit of the open meeting law.
Right. Or maybe more directly, furthermore, the open meeting law allows public bodies to, with them we're using allowed tries. Open meeting law permits public bodies to allow individuals who aren't members of that body to participate remotely. Period.
That's true. It sounds more convincing to me if that
Yeah.
statement is indeed true.
It is true.
Okay.
All right, could you say that again, Paul?
Furthermore, comma, the open meeting law already permits a public body to allow individuals who are not part of that body to participate remotely in a meeting.
Do we want to qualify it with "it is our understanding"? Because we're not actually probably legal experts here.
Sure. Furthermore, it is our understanding that the open meeting law, sure. Yeah. It better, because we've been doing it for years for COVID. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So I get Jonathan's point. I do think this is a stronger statement.
Yes.
Any other concerns, comments? Otherwise, I'll delete what we had before.
That's good with me if it's good with other people.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Great. Okay. All right. Okay, and then in other words, okay, so this is referring back to we had up here the different where was it? Different models of virtual meetings.
Yes.
Right. So that one section was referring to these sort of hybrid models that are allowed under open meeting law.
Yeah. Do you want to just hyperlink that reference to types of virtual meetings back to that heading?
If I can find it again. Let's see, where was it?
Yeah, back up. I think you just passed it. Yep.
Remote meeting participation.
Oh, we already did. It is hyperlink. Okay, that's
there we go. Okay, perfect. Okay.
already allowed as they are not impacted by option C would become an option for Belmont should the select board vote to open date and currently not permitted. The exception of the temporary emergency right, that order is effectively enabled. Option C and E on a temporary emergency basis, changes to virtual forums and entirely virtual meetings going forward. Yes. Changes to the open meeting law will be needed, yeah. Yeah. Great.
Okay, and then there's some technical requirement, basically describing what we've been doing, right?
Sorry, I was on mute there, but when we say will be required, I think we mean would be required.
Would, yes, right.
I'm sorry, where is that?
I don't, well, I'm highlighting on my screen, but I don't know if you can see it.
The
Changes to
last
open meeting law would be
Yeah.
needed to allow virtual quorums and entirely virtual meetings going forward.
Got it. Would be needed, yep. Okay. So last section, technical requirements, basically descriptions of what we've done. Software, other considerations, meeting room setup, user education, meeting recordings and video, accommodating committee members and the public, and then a short conclusion.
But there was a discussion at one point about that the recordings would need to be somehow given to the town clerk and put under some sort of control. Is that
It's in
is that
there.
still in here? Okay, it
Yeah.
scrolled by very quickly. I didn't.
Yeah, it's right there at the, under the note,
Okay,
custody, storage, whatever.
Once again, I think OML kind of
Oh,
doesn't
right.
have anything about this. I think that's something that towns are gonna have to decide for themselves.
Right.
You know, because it really, it comes down to who's making the recording. If it's Belmont Media Center, then it's not the town's property. And if it's, you know, the committee itself, that's different. So that's all stuff that would need to be hammered out kind of probably by the town administrator and Dave's team and stuff like that, and Ellen.
do we want to make an opinion about whether these recordings are sufficient in lieu of minutes, or whether minutes will still be required?
You'll still
Or
need minutes.
I don't think I don't think so, because the OML requires minutes.
yeah,
So I mean, I think that's jumping too deep in the weeds of changes to OML.
Yeah,
no, I'm not advocating it. I'm actually
Yeah.
unadvocating it. I just want to
again,
make.
yeah. That's something the legislature would probably take up in the process of, you know, redrafting this. There have been a couple, and Dave, you linked to, and I think Glenn, some opinion pieces that people have written about OML and, you know, virtual meetings after COVID and stuff. I'm a little surprised that, you know, Beacon Hill isn't more on top of this, but.
So,
Oh my God, I love your background, Dan.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I was wondering if I should add Bernie to the attendance list.
Oh, yeah, that's outstanding.
It's documented.
so I had a couple of additional comments
All
that
right, I'm
weren't
going to make him
reflected
go away.
in the doc. I don't know
Yeah,
if
go ahead,
we're through that pass. So they both related to this comment that was sent around by for people to look at in the context of this report. One of them had to do with not having secret texting going on between members of the committee during the meetings. So sidebar
Oh, the
conversations.
letter to the editor I sent.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
so I'm thinking that in the concerns section, which I think is a few sections back, we might want to consider adding something there about, you know, a policy needs to be set around use of the chat, and that because it's an open meeting, that the chat needs to be by policy or by implementation, the chat needs to be open to everyone, and there shouldn't be any chats that go on amongst you know, committee members during the meeting that might be in violation of OML. So
Yeah.
Well, do we?
I don't think we need to develop the policy. I think we just need to raise it as a potential
Yeah,
concern in the potential concerns section.
because I think this is independent
I
of
think
remote
we
participation.
said something about needing rules. Sorry, go ahead.
This is an issue that could come up even if we weren't participating remotely. You know, I could have my, phone underneath the table texting Paul about something.
Yep.
So I agree that there needs to be a policy for this, but I don't think it's linked to remote participation per se.
No, I think the difference, there is really no difference, because you're right, Dan. You could have a Signal group or a WhatsApp group, with three of your committee members on it, and you could all be chatting back and forth under the table on your mobile device.
I kind of disagree with that. I think if there's three committee, if you're all in a room and there's 3 or 4 committee members who are also all spending an inordinate amount of time looking at their phones and typing on their phones, that's a lot
Maybe
more obvious than if everybody's sitting in their home offices. So
yeah,
I use as an example. I was at the public library probably 15 years ago, and there were 2 people sitting at the public terminals, and they were both teenagers, and it became obvious within 30 seconds that they were texting back and forth with each other in the library between the 2 terminals, which were back to back, just based on their reaction. So I think the opportunities for abuse are higher in a virtual environment.
Yeah, I was going to say, nevertheless, these platforms do make it easy to have those sidebar conversations, just, integrated with the whole app experience. And it probably does make sense to set some ground rules of saying, if you're using Zoom or Google Meet, you should be setting it up so that there's only public chat, everybody to everybody, rather than
if there is a way to do that.
I don't know if there is, but
it still falls under the general the overarching rule that deliberation must be public. So whether it's passing notes under the table or texting on WhatsApp or none of that can be allowed.
I think given the abuses that have been known to happen in Belmont previously in other committees, being explicit in the report would be safer than just assuming that people know the rules.
You could also say, that let's say that any chats, public or private, will be saved and as part of the record of the meeting, and that would basically discourage people from having those conversations, and create a public, paper trail and public record of the conversations themselves. Same as if I whispered in your ear at a public meeting on a committee, something that not everybody might hear, but still technically taking place in public.
Yeah.
So you might do it that way, that either you ban it or have everybody to everybody only, or you set some ground rules around all chat conversations being archived as part of the meeting record itself.
Yeah.
And that
in essence, those private chats constitute a separate meeting in and of itself, which is a violation of OML.
I don't know if that's clear, though. I don't think it's clear that that's true. I mean, there's just
because the conversation is happening within the room of a posted meeting, the fact that the conversation is private really means it's a separate meeting that hasn't been posted.
Well, okay, so if we're gonna split hairs, I guess if two of the committee members excuse themselves to go to the bathroom and have a conversation while in the bathroom and they don't constitute a quorum, is that a violation of the open meeting law?
Absolutely.
I don't know. You think so?
Absolutely. Yeah, because in fact, one of the issues about keeping the select board so small was prevent 2 selectmen from meeting on the street and having a discussion about policy.
But 2 out of 3 is a quorum. 2 out of 9 is not a quorum. So that was kind of my question.
Jim was saying if it wasn't a quorum.
Right.
So if 2 people are chatting in a meeting using their phones and it's not a quorum. Anyway, my point is, I think it's an area where there's some complexities to it, and we might want to, people may assume, well, if 2 people are chatting by texting to each other privately in the meeting, and there are 2 people out of a total of 20, they're not a quorum, therefore it's okay for them to do that, but the town might want to have a policy around that, especially if the town's providing the infrastructure.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that I think that putting it in the report is in a comprehensive fashion is hard, because as we've just discovered, there's all sorts of nuances that I'm trying to figure out how to cover it. To be honest with you, in that letter, the one that I actually found more interesting and troubling was her demand that everybody have their camera turned on. Phil.
Yes. And I do agree that if everybody has a camera on, then we're less likely to have those sidebar conversations. My concern with kind of putting something in here as with the previous topic is that the more questions that we have in this report, the more likely the select board will kind of say, oh, look, yeah, there are all these unknowns here, and we're not ready. So I'd prefer that our report kind of didn't leave them open-ended, but rather maybe it's worth talking to town council about whether any recordings would constitute records that should be kept by the town clerk, and and prescribe how that should be done, for example. I just knowing the select board, I think that if we leave too many open issues like that, they'll just say we're not ready, and we're not, more deliberation or more information is needed. I just
on that.
raise that as a concern. Yeah.
I think Phil's point is very well taken. It's hard to measure the temperature of the select board on this particular issue, but I've got to believe that there's at least one person on the board who's going to take any opportunity to basically say, yeah, too complicated, too premature, let's not do it. So we got to be careful. And I'm not saying exactly what should be put in and what should not be put in, but we got to be careful.
Yeah, and I don't want to be deceptive in any way, obviously, but I do want to make sure that we're as clear about the our position as we can be, so that it doesn't leave sort of
Ambiguity is going to be bad. I'm kind of with you on that.
Well, I've registered my concern. If the committee feels like it's not something that rises to the level of including in the report, then I will.
I think we
Cede
say
my
somewhere
position.
that the town needs to think about rules of behavior or something similar to that, as I recall.
And if we put it in, I would
use that particular term.
Well, I would be inclined to first of all, Jim, we always value everything that you have to contribute to the committee.
I know.
I would be inclined to maybe just modify that, in the part of the document where we talk about the town or the needing to come up with ground rules. We could kind of make a reference to the use of in-app chat features and so on, that there needs to be clarity about this. As we go forward, and it would be better to have a standard policy than let every committee do something differently. So
Yeah, that'd be fine if you can.
Yeah,
find the appropriate way to do it.
Give a few obvious examples.
Yeah.
And then end with there should be some consistency on these rules for all the committees, not just for some of them.
Yeah, whether or not they're participating in or they have remote participation by membership, right? As we're pointing out, this can be, it's probably less likely to happen in in-person meetings, but it's the same problem. I mean, it is a similar problem.
So we may want
Go ahead.
to add a sentence saying something. Anytime we state that there's a policy that needs to be created, we need to say who's responsible for enforcing it. So just a sentence saying, committee chairs will enforce policy or something to that effect.
Yeah, articulate and enforce.
Articulate and enforce report violations to the select board for further discipline or
You could put it in the user education. There's a user education section
Yeah.
which talks about training on the use of hardware and software, how to integrate remote members, how to manage questions to the public, compliance to the OML. You could just include something that says like use of in-app chat functions or something like that.
Yeah, sidebar, use of any technology for sidebar conversations. A policy should be articulated and consistently enforced throughout committees.
I think we might be able to say it even stronger. Use of technology to subvert open meeting law will not be permitted.
Yeah. And should be this should be articulated and enforced by committee chairs. Probably.
Okay, so do we agree that they should go under user education?
I like it there.
Fine. All right. So, is this a recommendation we're making?
But yeah, does somebody want to?
That's in the other considerations section. So I don't know if it's a recommendation per se. Okay, if you're looking for a recommendation, I would suggest after where it says how to manage questions from the public, whoever's editing.
Yeah, sorry. So which is this on the page I'm on? Or
You're under
somewhere else?
user education.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stop moving.
Sorry.
After how to manage questions from the public, which is right in the center of the screen, add another comma separated
Yep,
phrase
right there.
that says appropriate use of in-app, or maybe just say appropriate use of chat.
Messaging tools.
Yeah. Comma. Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. Great.
Perfect.
Okay.
The other thing I'm reluctant now, that was kind of a deeper hole than I expected. The other thing I suggested was there was an editorial in the Boston Globe that was supportive of enhanced use of remote and hybrid events. So if you go back to the very beginning of the doc, in the executive summary, I inserted a suggested sentence that references that article. It should be in green if suggestion mode worked right. Yeah, there you go. So you can accept, delete, modify, whatever the committee would like to do.
Jim, I realize your link is intended to take them to the particular editorial, but maybe it'd be a good idea to state the date evidenced.
Yeah. So
But,
yeah.
I'm actually going. Yeah, let's do this because my suggestion is we footnote it as well.
it's
Yeah,
Boston Globe, May 3rd, 2020.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of newspaper links don't last. So there may be a permalink somewhere, but sometimes these things can be hard to find.
Link bot.
Okay. Yeah, I have no problem accepting that.
Is it behind a paywall?
Yes.
All right. Well, I hope they have subscriptions to the Globe.
All right, I'm accepting.
I think we're good.
So we voted to approve this last time. Do we need to do, is this, the changes significant enough that we need to vote again, or are we okay with these? I mean,
can
we're
vote
all
on it.
here. It probably doesn't
Better
matter.
safe
I'm
than
just-
sorry.
We voted to approve it as amended, and basically we've just made the amendments. Is that my recollection?
I
That-
believe
yeah,
that,
exactly.
that's what was in the meeting,
Yeah.
the minutes, I believe, yeah.
So
I don't think there's any
we
harm
need
in taking another vote.
I don't think we need to approve it again. I think we can just
Okay.
say, is everybody happy with it? And if so, we can, I will send it off to the town administrator and the select board, and Dave and Glenn, I'll probably copy you on it and suggest again that, because we've now got 2 reports into them, that we set up a time to meet with them and have a broader discussion of both of those. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do it. The only other question I have is, I think one of the suggestions in this report is that the select board, work with our elected representatives in the state to encourage them to take up some reforms to the existing OML. Would this committee be interested in drafting some kind of an opinion piece or an op-ed, either for the select board or in lieu of the select board, if they're not interested in that, kind of distilling some of our experience and recommendations?
I think we had differences of opinion about this last time, but I remember
I can't remember
At
who
least it-
left it.
what I remember was that, and again, this is what I remember, so maybe I'm just projecting, is that we should not do that without input and approval from the select board. We should not speak
Freely.
for them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm with you on that. So let's put that off until after our meeting, and maybe it's a topic that we could raise with them in the course of talking about the report.
Yeah, we don't want to go rogue once we have to.
Go rogue.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. So that's two reports. I don't know, we cleaned off our docket now, or do we have a clean desk in front of us? I think we basically do.
Yeah, the select board will be convinced that we're worth what they're paying us, you know.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
really will.
So I think we
Getting
should
a
go on
raise.
and just finish up the meeting by talking about 2021 initiatives. I would say, I think one thing we should do probably next month's meeting is try and get Dave, Steve, and Robin in and just do a little touch in with them on what's going on, or maybe just schedule them out over the next couple months. It's the beginning of the year, just to touch base and see how things are with their departments, which is kind of part of our charter, and then but also pick out some longer term projects.
Not to interrupt you, Paul, but I guess I will. Small request, Glenn. Could you email the final copy of the remote committee work to all of us, please?
Yeah, sure. What I can do is, we're obviously just editing a Google Doc. Since I believe we finalized it now, I'll just cut it as a PDF so it's sort of locked in.
Okay,
And then I'll email that to the Shadow IT group.
thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
When did the ransomware report go in? Have we gotten any feedback from that?
No.
Okay.
Glenn, what was it, November? I think.
I actually don't even, was it sent? I actually don't remember. Sorry.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? I have my inbox open. I can just look and see when I sent it off to Patrice and her office.
I thought it was more recent than that, but I don't know. Time's lost meaning in the COVID.
Yeah, my recollection was that we were planning to send it along with this report sometime after our last meeting. And that's why I'm saying I don't remember seeing it.
I definitely sent it because I sent them, I remember, like a link to download it to Patrice Garvin. Let me just see if I can. So weird. One second.
Actually, Paul, I have an idea. It's no obvious, I guess, but you're going to email this remote committee work report to her, aren't you?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Why don't you just within the cover email just say, hey, by the way, just wanted to make sure that you got my report on ransomware, and basically that. In other words, just get her to confirm that she received it.
No, November 24th, I sent it with a Dropbox link to Roy, Patrice, Glenn, and David.
Mhm.
Oh, Glenn and David, yeah, right. Roy and Patrice. And then I didn't really hear anything. So later that week on the 28th, I also shared a copy of that link with Adam and Tom Caputo. So just to make sure that everybody had a copy of it. Adam replied on the 30th saying, thanks, Paul, I had not seen this. And we had a little bit back and forth just saying, yeah, thanks for sending it. And we'll take a look.
So you've gotten the confirmation that it was received.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. All right.
So that was end of November.
Yep. No, Paul, I just found it too. That was actually one of the emails I had not opened. So I apologize for that.
All right. We all have inbox Saurus. Okay.
I'm always a little nervous about retention and data retention, and maybe we should pull a PDF out of there and have it someplace we can all find if we need it.
Sure. I'm with you. Where would be good?
That's a really interesting question. Maybe that's another topic for us, is when we create documents in executive summary, how do we share them with the town clerk?
I think I had a time limited link too. So if they didn't download it within, I forget, I think I set it to 2 weeks or something, the link expired. So I need to, yeah, where do these documents live? I mean, once the ransomware report is different because it's kind of confidential, but remote meetings and stuff, generally the town clerk or the administrator's office will post them on the town website for ITAC, and there's a link to download them there. Yeah.
No, I'm specifically thinking about artifacts that we create in executive summary that are meant to be confidential, at least for some period of time. And we don't want them to be public. We don't want them to get lost. What do we do instead?
Good question.
I mean, I'm saving all those executive session minutes, and they're backed up for as long as Microsoft continues to do a good job of of supporting OneDrive. But that's certainly not an official thing. And the town clerk was pretty clear that if I submit them to her, they become public. So she said to sit on them until I'm ready to make them public. It's like, really?
Yeah,
that just doesn't sound right to me. But that was the guidance I got from her.
Well, maybe this is an area where we could suggest improvements or something.
I have to figure that they have an assumption that executive session is a select board thing and maybe school committee thing and nobody else, and they're all managed where other committees really aren't.
Professional staff, yeah. That is one of the challenges, I think, is there aren't that many I mean, in theory, any committee can go into executive session if you're talking about a certain type of information, but not that many committees are talking about that type of information. So,
Yeah.
and we happen to be one of them.
Well, there may be other committees that have to deal with sensitive information that's protected by different, different sets of laws. Like I'm sure the school has all sorts of information that they need to protect about their students. I mean, can we glom onto whatever they're doing or use whatever policy they're using? Or is the school just a totally separate thing from the town and there's no way to combine them?
Well, I think the schools like to think they're a separate thing from the town, and then in many respects, well, some, not many, some respects, that point of view is very warranted. And you just brought up one of them, and that's, the confidentiality of a lot of the information that they deal with in relation to the student body. And of course, we don't have that issue in what we do. So.
Well, we don't.
yeah,
But the issue.
We're an
go
all
ahead.
volunteer body, right? We're an all volunteer body.
Yeah.
Schools, the select board, the board of health, all those boards that have sensitive stuff have much better access to town infrastructure than any all volunteer body is going to have.
True.
And so if they have to, if they take minutes in executive session, they have a place to put them, in town's place that is, presumably reasonably kept confidential from, well, certainly from the public. There's probably some IT staff who have, some level of access and are checked to make sure that they won't abuse it. But like I said, Ellen, so you guys are, you guys don't fit that.
Yeah.
And
Well, I'm not sure, but I think I think we're in agreement. I mean, if they have stricter requirements for recording what goes on in executive session, so be it. And we just don't need those stricter requirements. Is that pretty much what you were saying, Dave?
well, I mean, that was, the guidance she gave to me. I would certainly feel more comfortable, if a couple years from now someone does a discovery and wants to see our executive session minutes, and I go off to my OneDrive and I discover that Microsoft has corrupted everything. What's my liability? I would much rather there be a place for me to put them, but obviously at this point there appears to not be.
Yeah, I mean, there really should be.
I mean, I think that's a low risk, by the way, so I'm not sweating it, but
This
Well,
really,
what's more likely is, you'll retire and, move to Fiji or something, and we won't be able to find you when we need a copy of that thing.
yeah, right.
I mean, listen, there is a real, I mean, Dan raises a big issue. And I don't know, maybe this is an issue that maybe even could be on our agenda for 2021, because I think it's bigger than just what do we do with the PDF of the ransomware report? Because it's easy enough to be like, well, we'll just create a Dropbox share and we'll all have access to it and it'll live there. And the issue is really one around, I mean, I think business continuity. I'm guessing Dave and Steve and stuff have business continuity stuff that they've wrestled with, but it's more kind of about historical record keeping and memory, really, and just like you were saying about the newspaper links, link rot is a real problem. I wrote hundreds of stories for IDG in the early 2000s as a correspondent and a news desk reporter. I don't know how many of those are still online and discoverable. I mean, it's, a lot of them just have gone into the memory hole, as InfoWorld and Computer World, revamp their websites and change their link structure and all this other stuff. When you're talking about the town and its historical memory of who said what when, we've got great record keeping in digital format, but I guess there's a bigger question of, 100 years from now, if they want to figure out what this IT advisory committee did in 2021, how much thinking have we done about how they're going to do that? You know, like it's a really big problem, and you do want, because like again, we're one decision by a Microsoft executive to be like, oh, let's ditch OneDrive, you know, we'll move to this platform, and all of a sudden, you know, stuff gets lost in the transfer or the migration. And you know, we can't really afford to lose stuff. This is the town's history in some ways. So I don't know. It's a big issue. I don't think anybody's really thinking about it too hard. But and just at a practical level, I would think like you guys said, for all, it would be, I think what would make sense would be that there is a standard, you know, for the committees that don't have professional staff running and managing the logistics of the meeting, which would be school committee and select board, that there should be some standard platform and protocol where everybody's parking their stuff, right? Just to make that record keeping function easy. So it's not the work of the committees is stored on the hard drives or cloud accounts of 70 different Belmont residents who, you know, may or may not be living here in 10 years, may or may not be alive in 10 years. You know, that's a real problem for the town. Sorry.
You know, no, I brought it up, and I think it's worth raising. Someone may already be thinking about
it a little
this.
bit, although not in. We talked about it a little bit in the 21st century government subcommittee, where we talked about improvements to how the town provides a platform for minutes to be submitted and so on. And you know, if they were to take that approach, certainly adding something for dealing with confidential stuff could be added. Right. So, for example, if Dave, set up a SharePoint site for, for each committee, I mean, there's a headache in that in terms of managing the user access and stuff. Although, as I understand it, with federated identity, maybe that's not as nearly as bad as it could be. You know, it wouldn't necessarily have to have a belmontma.gov account for every committee member.
There's a certain amount of overhead for managing this because people will rotate in and out of committees, and so every time there's a new officer in the town, they'll have to add them and take the old ones out, and but I'm sure they have this sort of churn that they have to handle anyway. I don't think it's anything totally new.
What do we think?
I think it's an interesting topic to talk about in 2021, although I don't think we would want to limit it to the sensitive data topic. It's more about data in general, and I think
just like one use case.
That.
Executive, because again, with executive session, the documents are still public, right? I mean, the discussion happened privately because of sensitivity around negotiations and so on, but there is no shield for the information. It just is, if somebody wants it and knows to ask for it, they can get it. It's a public record. So in some cases, in some ways, the executive session issue is it's a different use case, but at the end of the day, these are all public records that we're creating. And
so just so make sure I understand this, so we've mentioned ransomware report about 15 times now. That means that anybody listening to this knows that that document exists and go to the town clerk and ask for it and get a copy of it?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we don't need to protect it all that much, but while we're writing it, we may want to protect some of our thoughts anyway.
Yeah. In the same way that, if you want to, find out the details of, salaries and I'm guessing even kind of, negotiations with unions and stuff. Again, they don't happen in the public for obvious reasons, but my understanding is, if you want to understand what happened, that you can get that information. So anyway, yeah, it's a useful, again, I think there's like a very practical piece of it, which would be, can the committee make some recommendations about how to support other committees in, managing their products and their output in a way that's consistent, that we know the data is getting, the information is being captured and archived and is accessible, years hence. So that's, and what's there, as you guys know, there are like a bazillion different platforms that you could choose from to do that. But, what would be the criteria? What would be the best thing for the town to do on that? And then there's the bigger, mushier piece, which is, again, somebody 40 years from now wanted to look through the communications, the email communications that went back and forth between town employees in 2021. How would they do that? And are we really sure that they would be able to do that?
No.
That the data is going to be
For
safe?
40 years, I hope that the town has a reasonable expiration policy, and as long as everything just expired according to that policy, they're covered.
Well, not necessarily. My sister's an historian, and she worries about this stuff a lot.
There will be documents. Yeah, certain documents will not be covered by that, but general stuff between regular town employees certainly will be covered by that. Like executives would not be.
Well, my point is that format matters. And, if stuff, for example, is stored in, Word Perfect, in 10 years or even now, can people actually access it? I mean, so it's not only having a repository for these digital files, but it's having a format which is archival and long lasting as well.
Well,
Or a medium, even a CD
Yeah.
is a format, right? We know CDs rot. So
it's not very exciting, but the IETF has solved this problem by using 7-bit ASCII, and you can still read the first RFCs that were drafted, like 45, 50 years ago.
2 years ago.
And you'll be able to read them in the future too. They'll look pretty archaic, but they'll work.
Right. Yeah.
Would your sister be willing to talk to us?
My sister lives in Paris.
We can go to Paris.
So we'll have to have the meetings earlier, I guess.
A lot earlier. Yeah, I mean, she might be willing to. I mean, she just bemoans the fact to me, and she's a technology Luddite.
Okay.
Part for
maybe we can find somebody who's really digging deep on this, specifically in regard to digital records, and kind of have them maybe come in and talk to us a little bit.
What do we know about how the town is storing meeting records and other records digitally? I mean, it seems to me as we're talking through this, it really should just be a permissioning / partitioning of whatever the storage is to handle the more sensitive information and in particular the executive session, the data that's discussed and presented in executive session. And it seems like there's probably technologies such as, I don't know, a blind FTP site where you can securely upload those materials that go into executive session, but you don't see what's on the site, obviously. So I don't know. I mean, the town may already have figured all this out, and this is my point, is that maybe we should just dive into that a little bit as a committee, and then see if there's some recommendations that we want to make on that. Certainly, format is an important one, and I know that the town has engaged in various activities to convert to digital. I'm sure that there were considerations made as to the format and the longevity of the formats. I just don't know what it is. So I think it's probably something that if we get into this, we shouldn't do it blindly. We should first find out what is the town doing, right?
I think the town went through a big project where they actually scanned or digitized a bunch of records.
Yes.
And I think Dave Petto was leading that.
Yep, and I think they ended up being PDFs, but you know, I mean, again, that's it's worth our digging in there a little bit more deeply, I think, before we take on the topic.
I mean,
Yeah.
PDF, that's going to be around 100 years, guarantee it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Jonathan, if you're,
Guarantee it.
excuse me. Here you go.
It's amazing how fast these things go out. You
Oh,
mentioned, you know, an FTP site. Well, Chrome is dropping support for FTP.
Yeah,
Um,
I
So
meant
it's like,
something along the lines of that technology, right? So
yeah, but almost anything you can name eventually not going to work anymore, unless unless you really take a huge amount of forward thinking about what you're doing, which is really not as easy as it sounds.
no,
You know, if we wanted to be briefed about this, I'm sure Dave Petto would be happy to give us an informal briefing.
and maybe even Ellen would know, you know, practically how it occurs too, right?
Well, I mean, how it occurs now is, you know, for people like us, is we mail them what we want them to put up, and somebody on the town side who has access takes care of putting it where they want it to go. There's nothing for, I mean, if there was something for me to do this myself, they'd say, Dave, do this and leave us alone.
That may be, I mean, I'm representing this committee on the website renewal committee that Patrice set up. So that, and I know one of the things we're talking about is doing more of that delegation to committee members to maintain the website content themselves for their committees and decentralizing things a little bit. So that may be changing going forward. So stay tuned.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
I mean, in theory, that could solve the whole issue.
it could.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. No promises, but I you know, that is something that has come up for sure. Okay, interesting conversation as always. I think I'm with Phil. I think first step, if we were to look into that, if it's something we want to take on, would be to figure out what's going on, and you know, might guarantee you we're not the first people to consider this problem. So you know, figure out what decisions have been made, and maybe a problem that's already been solved, and we can just move on. But I think it's an interesting one. I think it's one that's an important question, important problem to look at anyway.
I'm curious, Dave. Right now, you know, when you send over or Paul, when you send over the agenda or the minutes to the meetings, what format do you use? I mean, do you send them a Word doc file?
PDF.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I did
Yeah,
a Word
email,
doc once early on, and they asked me to put it in PDF.
Okay.
Which is bad. Those are not easily indexed at all by search engines. It would make much more sense for there to be a form that you fill out and it posts it in just straight HTML. Let Google's, you know, spiders get at it, and you know, and also streamline things for us. So our reliance on PDF is not great from a information availability standpoint, if you ask me. But
There's
No, I agree. I agree. The reason for PDF obviously is they put a stamp on it,
mhm.
right? And that
Yeah.
marks it as, this is the final copy, this is the gold source, whatever.
A
So
physical
whatever
stamp.
electronic thing that we do, and I agree. We talked about this in the subcommittee, right? The ideal thing would be some web app that they provide that I get on and type into, and at the end, when I click a done button, the edit function gets grayed out and a PDF gets generated so they can put their watermark on it or whatever, you know, digital signature or whatever, and then it's done. And at that point, now you've got the benefits of both.
Or
this is yeah, I think that would be ideal. But looking at the historical stuff that we already have now, this is a suggestion we might want to make. There are tools, like there's an Apache project called Tika. I don't know if anyone has used this or seen this, but it extracts content from many different input formats, including PDF. So, it doesn't capture things like images and details of formatting and fonts. But if you just want to find out, what's the text of this letter that's in PDF, you just feed it into Tika and it spits out a bunch of plain text. So something like that could be really useful for the town website, where it's still, there's all these documents that are almost impossible to search because they're all in various formats that, and I don't know, maybe they have a directive that tells Google not to index them or something.
Is that
but
Tika?
Tika. Let me make sure there's not two Ks in there or something like that. Let me just go over here and do some quick Googling. Yes, 1K. Apache Tika. Tango India Kilo Alpha.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I don't even think that was part of our conversation, what to do in 2021. It just kind of morphed into that. It was really about what to do with the ransomware report. Are there other topics? But seeing as we're on that, other things that the folks wanted to talk about for possibly taking up as a committee or as a subcommittee in 2021?
Hey, Paul, I'll just remind everyone that we did cover quite a number of topic ideas at the last meeting that are actually in the minutes, right?
Yeah, I want to refer back to those. I'm sorry, I should have been clearer, Glenn. Yeah, based on the ones we already laid out last time.
Yeah, and I was going to follow that up with not only were there lots of ideas, but there were a lot of ideas that were, that we have in the past grappled with, and I think that we should look back at those and when we meet with whomever, Dave and whomever, Steve, we might want to just suggest that they come prepared to kind of remind us where they were, where the town has gotten with the various things that we had at one point talked about. Cyberbullying, the iSafe program, its implementation. There were just a few things that we brought up last meeting, and they are things that the town has considered. So I think it's worth, when we meet with Dave and Steve, to just bring that up.
Agreed. Just going through the list from the so I mean, I think 5G, guys, I think we'd all agree that 5G is almost certainly going to be on our agenda for this year. We can, maybe for next meeting, I can follow up with Patrice and just kind of see where things are with, what's the name of the company? Is it Charter, or can't remember the name of the company that, kind of see where things are. Yes, Extenet. Extenet. Kind of see where things are with them and whether they've had any further contact or request of the town.
Yeah, I'm very curious about that, because there was so much stuff about it, and then
Nothing.
I haven't heard anything.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what. But my sense was that they were floating trial balloons, and we were a trial balloon, and that I don't know if we popped and other trial balloons floated, or what. But that's my sense, is that they had a lot of kind of irons in the fire, and they focused elsewhere. But I actually don't know. I haven't looked into it. But I think it's worthwhile following up on 5G and just with Patrice in the town, and kind of see if we're needed, or kind of where things stand on that, and kind of continue to be available on that. Um, uh,
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, they may have made more proposals than they could actually fund,
yeah,
just to see which ones would come back soonest.
or where they weren't getting pushback and felt like they could move quickly. I think, in Belmont, I think they got a sense of, this is not a town that's gonna be super accommodating to us. So maybe we should focus our attention on towns that are more amenable to what we want to do.
Yeah.
So the other ones were impact of government, scrutiny, IG, antitrust, big technology companies on which Belmont may depend. Okay. Google, Apple in particular, or Google, and I don't know who else, Amazon, Amazon certainly. Online safety education. I think there's a huge need there again. We can continue kind of with some of the programming we've done on that. Software supply chain risk and response. I think that's probably something maybe we can talk about with Dave and Steve and Robin, but probably defer to them on that. But maybe just have a discussion about it when we get them in front of us, given solar winds and so on. Municipal broadband, I don't know. I kind of feel like that should maybe take a back seat right now, but I don't know.
What do we think about the municipal broadband issue?
I think it's a super important one, but I kind of feel like the leadership on that needs to come from somewhere that isn't the IT advisory committee. I think that's really, Belmont Municipal Light Department and is probably the key player there, just because of the infrastructure they own. And
yeah, and the motive force there just left the town for greener pastures too.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Can you expand upon what you mean by that, Bullet? Are you talking about offering broadband as a municipal, public utility, essentially?
Yeah, I think so. Just like
yeah, I think that's part of it, and maybe just kind of more broadly, sort of a bigger role for BMLD as a provider, not just of electricity, but maybe also of information services to the town, using the infrastructure that it owns and operates, and what that might look like. I think they'd be, certainly based on the previous director, obviously they're looking to diversify, their revenue over the next, coming decades. And there certainly are many examples. I visit this website of this group called the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, ILSR, that writes a lot about municipal broadband and different initiatives to kind of, give people an alternative to going with, huge telecommunications companies at the local level.
Well, I know the town has, a legal agreement with, I guess, Comcast now. It's hard to keep track, and Verizon, and I don't know we can do this right now.
I have no idea. Yeah, I look at it as more kind of the spaghetti on the wall. What are communities doing? Because we are in the position of having our own utility, which gives us a resource most communities don't have. And it's kind of more of the spaghetti on the wall. What are communities doing? What are some of the proposals that are out there? Are any of these something Belmont would have any interest in, or that are even feasible in this community? But I haven't really thought about it much beyond that.
I know there are communities, ones I'm aware of are out in California, but are there any Massachusetts communities that have municipal broadband?
Concord.
Concord.
That's where
Okay.
our former guy came from. He briefed us on it.
Yeah.
They set it up in Concord because in Concord, Comcast and Verizon decided that they couldn't make it. It was too hard because they're so spread out. It was too hard to run all the necessary cabling. Verizon won't even touch them with fiber. And so it was sort of out of necessity.
And I wonder with, the Verizon outage impacting, remote learning 2 days ago, whether it's a topic that we want to bring up from just a diversification or redundancy perspective, in particular with remote learning and that kind of thing being sort of the norm now. I don't know, hopefully it won't be for a whole lot longer, but certainly it does that event did kind of kind of make it clear that redundancy would have been nice.
Well,
Well,
I think
Yeah,
even when
but
remote
are there
learning
any
goes
other
away.
players?
Go ahead.
Right, because that outage probably affected I don't know. It didn't affect my house for whatever reason. I guess we got lucky.
Same
But,
here.
it would not surprise me if it affected the school. I don't know, but if it affected students, I mean, how many people are going to have multiple connections to their house?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, at least, I mean, we could have the town be resilient to
Yeah.
it, but if it was, it was affecting, I don't know exactly what was the level of effect. I do know that it did affect the schools. I know that my son was not, well, our internet wasn't impacted. So
Right.
Dan, if I understand your comment a few seconds ago about existing contracts that the town has with Comcast and Verizon, those franchise agreements are strictly related to video services, cable TV. They do not at all touch on telephony nor internet.
Oh,
Now,
so
granted, things are going to blur as we see as video programming comes over the internet, but those contracts are very specific.
that's
Yeah, I
good to
think
know.
that may have
Thank
been,
you.
I seem to remember, I can't remember the guy's name, Roberts something, the former light department manager from Concord. I can't remember his
Was
name.
it Bob? His last name was
Roy.
Chris Roy?
Chris.
Chris Roy, that's it. Yeah. My recollection was that I think that the video contract was the case with Comcast as well. The problem that people had was Comcast was only willing to run like the lowest quality lines out to some of these more remote parts of town, and that kind of led to them running municipal broadband, and they could do that because they were explicitly not providing any kind of TV or anything like that services, other than whatever you might be able to get over the internet, like cord cutting.
you're not
Everything,
talking
yeah.
about Concord's experience, right? Correct?
Yes, I'm remembering what he told us about Concord's experience.
Because for a moment there, I thought, well, gee, there's an opening here up on Belmont Hill or what have you, but I'm sure you didn't mean that. But municipal broadband, to me, I mean, I don't know enough about it to really say, but it is something that's probably more valuable the more rural and stretched out your community is. And Concord is much more stretched out than Belmont, has been for years and years. So it's an interesting concept, but maybe it's not something that demands a lot of immediate action.
Okay, in the interest of time, because we're at 9 o'clock. Do we want to take a vote on each of these and kind of see where people's interests are from Dave's notes from last time, or do we want to? How do we want to kind of pick which of these we want to plant the flag on?
Well, there's also a related issue.
Do we want to set working groups for them? That would be do we want to set up working groups to tackle some of these?
Yeah, but there's also this other issue about shouldn't we be keeping these self-generated ideas and reviews on the smaller side as opposed to the deep dive side, which would be perhaps more appropriate when and if the select board said, gee, you guys should look at this in depth.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Charlie, I wanted to back that up and say, you know, what I think we all agree this is an interesting list, and you know, as we just evidenced over the last half an hour, there's a lot of interesting concepts and things we can talk about here. But I would love to get some input from our customers, so to speak, right? You know, the select board or other members about what is top of mind for them. And if there's an overlap with some of these topics, you know, all the better, but they also may be thinking about something that we haven't even put on the list yet that we would want to keep open, right? And so I think with this opening of trying to get the remote committees report in front of them, reminder about the ransomware report, I think it could be helpful to use it, you know, ideally, and if it's, you know, just a one-on-one that Paul has with Patrice, that, you know, that'd be fine. If it's a larger group of us talking in front of the select board, that might be a great opportunity too, to solicit that feedback from them, both in terms of the topics, but then also the format, right? You know, these long form reports might actually be, you know, the sort of thing that goes on a shelf and never gets looked at. And there might be something in terms of form factor and delivery that might be more useful for them. You know, maybe it's more just short-term or short form presentations that we, you know, we're in front of them on a more regular basis or whatever the case may be. So I think there'd be sort of two useful inputs, is one on topic, one on format.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Good input. Okay, well, I think that makes sense. I think, why don't we then plan on trying to get on the agenda with the select board sometime within the next month or 8 weeks, and we can have our next meeting maybe in conjunction with that, or before, or immediately before it, also, you know, we'll reach out to Steve and Dave, and Robin, try and get them scheduled to come in at some point in the next couple in the first quarter.
Let's not forget library.
And library, yep, yep.
Yep. Police fire, yep.
Ellen, yep. And then, yeah, like Glenn said, kind of maybe share with them some of the things that we've been discussing, but also get their ideas on what's top of mind for them. I know Patrice is obviously willing and interested in using our committee to help her with some of these issues. I do think 5G is going to be an issue in 2021. So that sounds good to me. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other suggestion I have, Paul, is maybe between now and our next meeting, or, you know, just even over the next few meetings, before we decide on any of these things, you know, I think all of us are fairly well read, and, you know, have a number of different sources available to us. And if any of these sort of topics float to the top of our reading list and you find an interesting article, I would just encourage us to share links around, right? And say like, hey, you know, we were talking about 5G at the meeting last night, and by the way, this just popped on my radar, right? Or The Economist just published this, or the Wall Street Journal had this, just so that we can get a little bit more current on which topics are sort of being.
Hey guys, maybe we should set up an ITAC Slack, and we can Slack each other. I'm joking.
Good.
I need
Okay.
another Slack.
Okay.
I don't have enough.
Yeah,
I don't have enough
that was
of them.
the joke, right? That was the joke. And yes, it is a violation of open meeting law. What do we want to do? Do we want to just set a pencil in a meeting for a month from now, and then you know, we might move it based on what the selectmen's availability is, or select board's availability is.
Sounds right to me.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. I should also note, our next meeting, we should talk about the officers of the committee and whether we want some changes there. I've been the chair for a few years. Somebody else might want to step up and be the chair. So I think that might be something that's good to talk about. It's the beginning of the year. It's a good time to do that. Okay.
Sure.
Everybody looks so enthused about that. I'm putting it on the agenda, whether you like it or not. Okay.
Hey, that's the power you get to wield.
That's my prerogative. That's right. That's right. So let's just see, looking at my schedule, or our schedules. looking at that week of the 22nd, or even the week of March 1st, either one. Anybody have any particular preference? This Wednesday, the 24th looks good for me, but I don't know about other people.
I've already got
Is
something
that-
on that night.
Is that school vacation week? No, I don't
No,
know if
it's
it
one
even
after.
matters this week. Okay.
School vacation week is the 14th to the 20th.
Yeah, the President's Day week. Yeah.
What about that March 3rd?
March
Wednesday.
3rd.
Yeah, March 3rd is fine.
Yep. March 3rd works for me.
Oh, works for me.
Okay.
March 3rd's good.
Works for me.
Okay, I will send out a Zoom for March 3rd, 7:30. Any other airing of grievances or feats of strength before the end of the meeting?
Just a quick follow-up on Charlie's request. You should have all received a copy of the PDF remote committees meeting. I sent it out while we were talking.
Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Thanks.
Good work on that, everybody. Thanks for your perseverance, and look forward to meeting March 3rd. Does somebody want to move to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
All right, take care, everyone. Have a great evening.
All right.
Take care.
Good night.
I know.